So welcome to our third lesson on twins and early study. Now just to remind you, in our previous lesson, we went over components of research. עברנו על המרכיבים של מחקר. And we're going to continue with looking at a short video on why we study twins. We're going to be looking at comparison and contrast, השוואה וניגוד. We're going to be looking at the connections of cause and result, סיבה ותוצאה. We're going to be looking for the writer's opinion, דעתו של הכותב על המחקר. We're going to continue looking at components of research. We're going to be looking at the findings and conclusions, הממצאים והמסקנות. And we're going to look again at what was the writer's purpose in writing this text. מה הייתה מטרת הכותב בכל הטקסט הזה. Okay, so watch the following video clip and focus on why twins are used in studies. Try and see if you find the explanation for it in the video. And also think about the differences between identical twins and fraternal twins. כן, מה אותם הבדלים בין תאומים זהים לתאומים לא זהים?
Twin studies allow us to estimate how much a trait comes from our genes and how much is influenced by environment. These identical twins share the same genes. They're the product of one sperm and one egg that divided into two embryos in an early stage of the pregnancy. They are therefore genetically identical. Non-identical twins derive from two different sperms and two different eggs. They're genetically as similar as ordinary brothers and sisters and share on average 50% of their genes. But they all share the same environment as they grow up in the same family. In twin studies, it is possible to separate out these different influences by comparing the resemblance between identical twins with the resemblance between non-identical twins. Data is gathered from numerous pairs of twins in order to gain an accurate estimate of the relative importance of genes and the environment. So identical twins share all their genes and their shared environmental influences. Differences between these twins can thus only be due to non-shared environmental influences. If both identical and non-identical twins resemble each other closely, this must be due to shared environmental influences. If identical twins resemble each other more closely than non-identical twins, then it gives us a clue that genetic factors must play a role. So, twin studies can provide clues on the relative importance of genes and environment, and thus provide information on where the balance lies between nature and nurture.
Okay, so that was complicated, but I hope that you succeeded in following the main issues on why we study twins. So now let's continue reading our text and look at the following question. Find 3 examples of similarities between identical twins according to paragraph 3. Now notice the word similarities, דמיון. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for 3 different examples of the similarities between identical twins. כן? אז תחפשו את הדוגמאות לתאומים זהים. So we're going to pause and look for the 3 examples. Okay, so of course we have the keywords for example, לדוגמה. That really is helpful, okay? So then you continue reading. So here we already have the first example. Both members of 7 of the pairs suffered from the same physical ailment, כן? 7 זוגות סבלו מאותה מחלה פיזית. So this is one example of similarities between twins. Let's continue reading. So we see again the word both, שניהם, which gives me a generalization, איזושהי הכללה, שאומר ששני דברים דומים. So both members of another pair developed a toothache in the same tooth at about the same time, and each had the tooth extracted. So here they're telling me about twins that had the same problems with their teeth. Now again, as you can see, the text continues with the word both, which tells me that I'm getting the same kind of information. אני מקבלת אותו סוג של מידע, של דמיון בין זוגות התאומים. Individuals of another pair were afflicted with ophthalmia. אני רואה את המילה הזאת, אין לי מושג מה זה אומר, אבל יש לי גם כוכבית. ברגע שיש לי כוכבית, אני מסתכלת בתחתית של העמוד, ואני רואה ש-ophthalmia means an infection of the eyeball. So now I can simplify it and understand that another pair had the same problem with their eye. כן, הייתה להם אותה בעיה או דלקת בעין. Now if we continue reading, the writers are telling us that there were two cases of similar insanity. היו עוד שני מקרים של חוסר שפיות אצל התאומים הזהים. And they also had similar associations. 11 pairs, 11 זוגות של תאומים, had the same or similar association of ideas. כן, הייתה להם אסוציאציות דומות, כן, לרעיונות שעולים. Then we get to the words on the other hand, מצד שני. Now the moment that I get to the words on the other hand, it means that I'm going to get a contrast. אני מקבלת ניגוד לכל מה שנאמר מקודם. אז אם אני מחפשת דמיון, כן, בין הזוגות השונים, אני דווקא אתרכז בכל המילים כמו both ו-similar, and the moment that I get to on the other hand, אני כבר יודעת שהנושא הזה עובר למשהו אחר. Okay, so in this case, we actually had 6 examples of similarities. Okay, you had to choose only 3. Okay, so now let's look at the following question, and this question will focus on the differences. According to Galton, what were the only factors that caused differences in similar twins? אז שוב פעם, what were the only factors? מה היו הגורמים היחידים שיכלו לגרום לשוני בין התאומים הזהים? So look for the key words, maybe factors, גורמים, תחפשו מילים כמו because, okay, due to, הודות ל. And look for where are they talking about differences. איפה מדברים על ההבדלים בין תאומים וכבר לא על הדמיון. Think about it. So remember that we were talking about the marker or the words on the other hand, מצד שני. ומתוך המילים האלה כבר ברור לי שאם מקודם דיברו על הדמיון בין התאומים, עכשיו ידברו על כנראה השוני בין הזוגות, וכתוב פה, on the other hand, there were differences, היו הבדלים, אז פה אנחנו נקבל כמובן the differences. Okay? So there were differences in disposition, היו שינויים באופי של הזוגות. Now, what caused this? Now look at this sentence. Galton reported that illness or accident was the only cause which appeared to be adequate to make similar twins unlike. Okay? So what were the only causes? Illness or accidents were the only reasons that similar twins became different. So we can summarize the answer and say the factors were serious illness or accidents, כן? מחלות חמורות או תאונות הם הגורמים היחידים שיכלו לגרום לשוני בין התאומים הזהים. Okay, so remember, when we see the word in contrast, בניגוד, צריך באמת לחשוב טוב בניגוד למה. So look at the beginning of paragraph 4. This is our last paragraph of the text. It begins with the words, in contrast to the similar pairs. בניגוד לתאומים הדומים. So what this tells us at the beginning of paragraph 4 is In paragraph 3, we were focusing on the identical twins or the similar pairs. Now, in contrast to them, בניגוד להם, we are going to be focusing on those who were unlike. אנחנו נתרכז בתאומים שלא היו דומים, or in other words, the fraternal twins, התאומים הלא זהים, התאומים שהם תאומים, אבל הם נראים כמו אח ואחות רגילים. או אחים רגילים כמובן, יכול להיות אחים. Okay, so now let's look at the question. After you're aware of the fact that we're going to talk about the fraternal twins, now we can try and answer the question. According to גלטון, were unlike pairs, זוגות לא דומים, affected by a similar environment. כן? האם הזוגות הלא דומים הושפעו על ידי סביבה דומה? Okay, and then we have the options yes or no. So continue reading paragraph 4. We're going to pause here and tell me which answer you would choose, yes or no. So, of course, you probably noticed the continuation of the first sentence of paragraph 4. It says here, those who were unalike, אלה שלא היו דומים, at the beginning of life, of course, did not become more alike as a result of their similar environment. כן? הם לא הפכו להיות דומים יותר כתוצאה מהימצאות בסביבה דומה. Okay, so now let's look at this question, which asks us, what two conclusions did גלטון draw from his evidence? Now, the best way to answer a question is to understand the question well before, okay? Now here we have a phrase that might not be familiar to you, and it is the connection between the two words to draw a conclusion. Now, to draw a conclusion זה לא אומר לצייר מסקנה, אלא זה אומר להסיק מסקנה. Okay, so writers draw conclusions, הכותבים מסיקים מסקנה. So what am I looking for in the text right now? I'm looking for the two conclusions that גלטון arrived at from his evidence. So let's pause right now and look for his two conclusions. And again, after reading paragraph 4, I'm sure you found the words גלטון concluded that. כן? גלטון הסיק ש. And after these words, we're going to get גלטונ's conclusion. What did he conclude? That environmental differences, הבדלים סביבתיים, such as are to be found in the same community and at the same time, produce slight change, כן? שינוי קל או שינוי קטן, slight means little, produce slight change in the individual's physical and mental makeup. Okay? So what גלטון is saying is that environmental differences only produce very, very small changes in an individual's physical and mental being. Okay? That's number one. And that, שתשימו לב, יש לכם הרבה and'ים, ואנחנו בדרך כלל מפרידים תשובות לפי ה-and, אבל צריך להיזהר באמת שה-and נותן לי מידע חדש או שונה. ולכן פה and that וש. כלומר, זה ברור לי ושמה, וש אנחנו מקבלים מסקנה נוספת. So let's continue reading and see if that's really another conclusion. And that physical and mental characteristics, כן, המאפיינים הפיזיים והמנטליים, are determined chiefly by inborn nature. So גלטונ's second conclusion was that our characteristics are actually inborn, okay? הם מולדים. כלומר, זה תוצר של תורשה. So here he's saying that the environment has little influence, זה פחות משפיע לנו לסביבה, and actually that heredity plays a bigger role, כן? שתורשה משחק תפקיד יותר גדול בתכונות הפיזיות והמנטליות שלנו. Okay, so one of our last questions here is, what is the writer's criticism of גלטונ's work? Now, if we were talking about Galton's study until now we're changing a little bit the type of question, because here we have to focus on what is the writer's criticism. כן, מה הביקורת של הכותבים על המחקר של גלטון. So I would actually look for words that tell me that the writers are giving their opinion. חפשו מילים שמצביעות על דעתם של הכותבים. So we're going to pause here and think about the criticism, מהי הביקורת. So after the conclusions, after Galton's conclusions, the writers give their opinion. הכותבים נותנים את דעתם. And notice the words however, אבל, and also it is to be noticed. כדאי לשים לב, אבל. מי אומר דברים כאלה? כמובן, הכותבים. So it is to be noticed, however, that Galton's evidence is much stronger in relation to physical traits than it is in relation to mental characteristics and abilities. So the writers are saying that Galton's evidence was good, but it was good only for the physical characteristics and less for the mental characteristics, כן? שמה שגלטון אמר נכון לגבי התכונות הפיזיות של תאומים, אבל פחות נכון לגבי התכונות המנטליות שלהם. And then the writers continue with, it should be noticed further, כן? יתרה מכך, צריך גם לשים לב. אוקיי? צריך לשים לב למה? זו כמובן עוד פעם מילים של ביקורת. That the differences in environment which were brought to bear upon the similar twins did not appear until adult life. So what they're saying here is that the influence of the environment on twins only manifested, רק התגלה, when the twins were older, כשהם היו מבוגרים יותר. Now we're going to continue looking at more components of research. So in our second lesson, we talked about the rationale of research, ההצדקה לכתיבה, הרציונל. We talked about the purpose, מטרת המחקר. We talked about the hypothesis, השערת המחקר. We looked at the method, מה שיטת המחקר, איך אספו את האינפורמציה. And we also looked at who were the subjects, מי היו הנבדקים או הנחקרים. Now, after reading paragraphs 3 and 4, we have here 2 additional components of research. Remember the question, find 3 examples of similarities between identical twins. חפשו דוגמאות ספציפיות לדמיון בין תאומים זהים. So when you're looking for specific information, okay, that came out of the method, what you're actually looking at are you're looking at findings and results. אתם בעצם מסתכלים על ממצאים. Now in English you have the word findings or results. They mean the same thing. So remember that the findings and the results are specific information that researchers got after collecting and analyzing the information. We also had the question, what 2 conclusions did Galton draw from his evidence? And of course, the last part of research usually are the conclusions, okay? The conclusions are generalizations that the researchers arrived at after looking at all of the information. כן, זה איזושהי הכללה או מסקנות שהגיעו אליהם אחרי שעשו את המחקר. על סמך הממצאים כמובן. So now we have here actually all of the components of research. Okay, so one last question. What is the writer's purpose in this text? Choose one answer. Now remember the writer's purpose. מה מטרת הכותבים בטקסט הספציפי הזה? ותחשבו על זה תמיד במובן של מה הכותבים עשו בטקסט הספציפי הזה. Now, we have 4 options. We're going to read the options together, and then I'm going to let you have some time and choose the correct answer. So A, the writer's purpose was to prove that genetic factors are stronger than environmental factors in shaping who we are. האם הכותבים באמת ניסו להוכיח שגורמים גנטיים חזקים יותר מאשר גורמים סביבתיים בעיצוב שלנו כבני אדם? Then we have B. Was the writer's purpose to describe early research that examined the connection between genes and the environment? כן, האם הכותבים ניסו רק לתאר ניסוי מוקדם על הקשר בין גנים לסביבה? Or C, to criticize, לבקר, to criticize the research method used by Galton in his studies of identical and fraternal twins? האם כל הטקסט רצה לבקר את השיטות של גלטון לגבי מחקרי תאומים שלו? Or D, did the writers try to show that we cannot know if twins' physical and mental characteristics are inborn? כן, האם ניסו לאורך כל המאמר הזה להראות שאין לנו באמת מידע לגבי האם התכונות של תאומים הן תכונות מולדות? So let's pause and choose the correct answer. And I hope that you all chose B. Because remember, when they're asking you what is the writer's purpose, you always have to ask yourself, is this what the writers did throughout the text, לאורך כל המאמר? ואם אני מסתכלת על האופציה של B, זה בדיוק מה שהכותבים עשו במאמר שלנו. מה שהם עשו, הם תיארו מחקר מוקדם על תאומים, כדי להראות לנו, להאיר לנו את הקשר שבין תורשה וסביבה, בין גנים לסביבה. So of course B is the correct answer. So now let's sum up. בואו נסכם את כל העבודה הקשה שעשינו פה ביחד, בעיקר אתם. In this text we looked at an early studies of twins. כן? הסתכלנו על מחקר מאוד מאוד מוקדם על תאומים. We looked at the components of research. עשינו סקירה ועברנו על כל המרכיבים החיוניים של מחקר. We looked at comparison and contrast. הסתכלנו על כיצד דברים דומים בתוך הטקסט, והסתכלנו גם על כיצד דברים מראים שוני או שלא דומים בתוך הטקסט. We looked at the relationship between cause and effect. הסתכלנו על הקשר בין סיבה לתוצאה. בגלל מה קרה. Okay? And we also looked at the writer's purpose. כן? מטרת הכותבים, מה הכותבים עשו במחקר הספציפי שלנו. Now, if you want to read or you want some more information about the following learning strategies, you can go into the following subjects. You can have some more information about pre-reading, the eye-catching features, scanning, components of research, purpose, comparison and contrast, cause and result, and the writer's opinion. Okay? So again, תוכלו לצפות בסרטונים הבאים המפרטים על אסטרטגיות הלמידה שעשינו לאורך כל היחידה.